Be'ezus Today's daf is daf Samach Aleph in Masechta Kesubos, and we're going to start from daf Samach Umid Beis all the way at the bottom. Tanur Rabbanim. Okay, we're talking about over here Tanur Rabbanim. It's about 1, 2, 3, 4, about 8 lines from the bottom. Samach Umid Beis. So we're talking about over here about Meinika. That a woman is obligated to nurse the baby. That's one of her obligations to the husband. They have a baby together, they have to nurse it. So the Gemara says like this: Tanur Rabbanim. This is talking about stam, a wet nurse. If someone hires a woman to nurse a baby boy. He gave hired a nurse to nurse a baby boy. She has to do her work honestly. She can't nurse also her own son or her friend's son because there's not going to be enough for 2 babies. So, and then the Brisa says, Paska Kima. She's supposed to eat a lot of food to make milk. If they only, in her contract, they only agreed that she's getting a little bit amount of food, she has to make sure, she has to eat a lot. Whatever, by hook or by crook, she has to eat a lot. Because again, she took on the responsibility to nurse a child. And the Brisa says, when you're nursing, you're not allowed to eat bad things that are not good for making milk. So now we explain the Brisa. The Brisa says, if they hired you to nurse a child, you shouldn't nurse your own kid at the same time or the friend's kid. So the Gemara asks the question, she's not allowed to nurse her own child because she committed to nurse somebody else's child. The son of another friend, certainly she can't nurse. So what's the chiddush? Why does it say it b'na and ben chaverta? So the Gemara says, Mahu the same I would have thought, b'na hu b'chayes ilove, mamtzi latvei. To nurse her own son, then we have a hakpada. Why? Because she probably is going to hold back the milk for the baby that she was hired for in order to save some of the milk for her own son. Avo ben chaverta, when she took on another child to nurse, her friend's, the son of her friend, ilav dahavalo moisar loy have mamtzele. That if it wasn't for the fact that she felt she's going to have extra, she wouldn't have agreed to that. So maybe it is permitted for a woman took on one job to take on another job to nurse another baby. Kamash Milan, no, we say no. Once you committed to one baby, you're not allowed to nurse along with that another baby. Paska Kima, if in the contract to being hired as a nurse, they gave you a little bit of food, right? They said you're going to have a little bit of food. So the Brisa says, Oichel is harbe. She has to eat a lot. So the Gemara says, Mehecha, where is she going to get this food from? If only the contract that the person doing the hiring is agreed to a little bit of food, where is she supposed to get a lot of food? Amrav Sheishis Mishalah, from her own. She has to put together. If she realized she negotiated the contract for the low value, she can't go on strike and say, oh, I'm going to wait till they give me more food. I'm not taking more food from my refrigerator. So, no, she has to come up with food from her own. Hi, Lewis, we just began. We're Samach Amid Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom. We're talking about what is bad for a woman who's nursing to eat. What are bad foods that she shouldn't eat? She's not allowed to eat bad things. So the Gemara asks, my nihu, what are bad things that a woman is not supposed to eat when she's nursing? Amar Rav Kahana said, "Kegoin kishus," like hops, the chaziz, and like alfalfa, green grass sprouts, the dugin ketanim, and small fish, the adama and soil. Even healthy soil that's healthy. She shouldn't eat that. Basically. These are, I guess, what these dugin ketanim is like high mercury fish. They tell a pregnant woman not to eat that. during her pregnancies, because it could affect during her nursing. She should not eat that. Abaya ama afila kra v'chabusha. She should not eat during nursing. She should not eat pumpkin. V'chabusha, I forgot what chabusha is. I have it. A quince. Rapapa ama afila kara v'chofra. Even pumpkin and palm branches with small unripe dates. Ravashi says, afila kamcha v'harsana. Kamcha is like yogurt. V'harsana is like Rashi says here, it's like small fried fish with flour, and it's fried in their oil. I guess it's not fully cooked, basically. Minayu, from the items that we said that a woman should not eat when she's nursing, some of them could actually poske chalba, could arrest the milk. In other words, she'll stop producing milk. Minayu, some of the foods we mentioned, achri chalba, will make the milk spoiled. So these are the food items that you should not eat when you're pregnant. Now the Gemara just talks about other things that have to do with things that you shouldn't do because it could lead to unhealthy children. So the Gemara says like this: if someone has marital relations on top of the millstone around the area where they're grinding grain, you're going to have children that are going to have epilepsy. If you do marital relations just on the ground, not on the bed, you're going to have children with a long neck, and that's not considered. It looks like a malformation. When you're pregnant, the dorcha aldama dechamra, if you step on the dung of a donkey, you'll have children. You'll have children. Girdane, Rashi says, is that they get bald very fast. I don't know how that happens. The ochel chardala. If you eat garden cress, you eat mustard, you'll have children who are always going to be hungry. The ochle tachle, if you eat garden cress when you're pregnant, you're going to have children that are always crying. The ochle mainine, if when you're pregnant you eat fish brine, you'll have children with blinking eyes. The ochle gargushta, if you eat soil, it's probably healthy soil, you're going to have ugly children. You're going to have ugly children. The shichra, if you drink beer when you're pregnant, you're going to have black, dark children. The ochle bisra, but if you eat meat, drink wine. So if a woman eats good meat and drinks wine during her pregnancy, we go to Daf Samach Aleph Amud Aleph, you're going to have healthy children. Now the Gemara continues. When you're pregnant, the ochlu beye, if you eat eggs, havale b'nei einonei. I don't know what that means. You'll have children with a malformation because they're going to have large eyes. Again, I believe this has to do with salmonella. Bacteria. If a pregnant woman eats that, it could affect the formation of the child. Dachle kave, one who eats small fish. Okay, this is probably low mercury fish. Havile b'nei chinane. You're going to have children who have who are very attractive. Dachle karpasa, but if you eat like celery, havile b'nei zivsane, you'll have beautiful children. The ochle kusbarta, if you eat coriander, havle b'nei bisrane, your children are, probably going to have a thyroid problem and they're going to be fat. Never. The ochle esroiga, but if you eat esrig, if the woman eats esrigs when she's pregnant, havle b'nei rechani, she'll have children that have good mouth breath. They'll smell good. And the Gemara tells a story. Barate de Shavar Markel, the daughter of the Persian king, Achla Ba'ima Esreg, her mother would eat Esreg. The Shvar Malka, the Persian kings, were good to Jews, and they had a good relationship. So the mother would eat Esreg when she was pregnant. When they wanted to bring sweet smelling, good smelling stuff for the king, they would bring his daughter because her breath always smelled good because her mother, the daughter's mother, would eat esrog when she was pregnant. Nu Gemara, Amar Rav Huna said, Badaklon Rav Huna Bachinina. Rav Huna Bachinina asked the question. Here's the question. She says, Lahanik, she wants to nurse. Hu Aimer, and he says, Shaloi Lahanik, I don't want her to nurse. Right? So then why wouldn't he want her to nurse? Why would he want to hire a nurse? The answer is because when she nurses, she's probably going to ignore him, and he's going to feel that she's going to lose her attraction. Shaiman Law, she wins out this argument because Tzara Didahi, because she has pain. She has this milk in her, and she needs to nurse, so it's very painful to hold it back. But what happens in the opposite case? Hu Aimer Lahanit. He says, I want you to nurse. The Aimer, and she says, Shloi Lahanik, I don't want to nurse. You got to hire somebody. Mahu, what's the halacha there? Now the Gemara explains. If it's not the normal, it's not normal to hire a nurse, right? The Shaiman law, right? Then we hear her out that it's not the normal way that she should nurse. You always hire a nurse. Then Shaiman law. Then we listen to her because everybody on the block is hiring nurses. You have to hire a nurse. But what happens? He aracha, who lav arache. Let's say in his custom, where she comes, she's supposed to nurse. Where he comes, let's say he comes from a wealthy family. His family always hired nurses. Like his brothers and sisters always hired a nurse. So, but he married a not wealthy girl, and in her family, the mother's nurse. What is the din? Do we go after him? And therefore, he has to hire a nurse because his family does hire nurses. Or maybe he can say, but your family, where you come from, your family nurses their children. They don't hire a nurse. So basically, the question is, does she enjoy the luxuries of being married to him because he comes from a wealthy home so that he would be required to get her a nurse? So the Gemara answers, Upishtina Lamaha. We have a Pashut case from a Brisa, which says when a man is wealthy and she doesn't come from such a wealthy home, Oili Imai, she goes up with him. Be'ena Yered this Imai, and when he loses some money, she doesn't go down with him. She always moves up the ladder, and therefore he has to hire a nurse on her behalf. Amar Avhuna Mikra. What is the pasuk that says that a woman joins up to the class of her husband? She moves up. So the pasuk says, "V'hu bu'ulas baal." She bu'ulas baal. We darshan bu'ulas is a up. She goes up the ladder to her husband. Bal yosei shebal. She goes up the class rung with her husband. But she doesn't go down the ladder to her husband. So therefore, we see that she moves up and stays there. Rab Laza Ama Mahacha. Rab Laza says another pasuk. It says by Chava, Hihi Hoysa Ein Kol Chai. She was the mother of all living creatures. We darshan Lechayim Nitna. She was married to Adam, and she was only go to connect to Adam to live. In other words, to go up and to live it easy. But not to live a life of stress and pain. That bottom line is, he's required, since his family usually hires a nurse, he has to hire a nurse for his wife. The Mishnah said, if she brought, let's say he married a lady that brought with her into the marriage one maid. So she does a few of the work. She does three. She does two, and she doesn't have to cook, do the laundry, etc. So the question is Hashara Avda, but she still has to do, let's say, make with the wool. She has to bake. So the question is, why? The Teimalei let her say to him, why I brought in one maid to take my place. I shouldn't have to do anything. The Mishnah says only after you bring 4 maids, then you don't have to do anything. Answers the Gemara, Mishum, because after 1 maid, the Amalah, the husband can say, this maid is going to work on behalf of me and on behalf of herself. But who's going to work for you? So therefore, it's not enough. You have to do some of the work to ease the burden on the maid. Shetayim, but if she brought in 2 maids, Eina mevashela, she doesn't have to cook. The Eina menika, she doesn't have to nurse her child. Hashar avda, but she still has to do other things like make the bed. V'teimele, she should tell him, achrita, but I brought you another wife, another lady, the tarcha l'didi ulidida. That's going to work for me and for her. V'chada, and another maid, lididach ulidida, for you and for her. So 2 maids should be sufficient. So why does the Gemara say no, that she still has to participate in the house errands and the house responsibilities, even after bringing in 2 maids? Answers the Gemara, Mishum da Amalah, because he can tell you, Kame orche parche man parach. Now that we have more people in the house, we're going to have orche, longer-term guests, uparche, short-term guests, orche parche. Who's going to be busy with them? Who's going to help them? So therefore, you still have to participate in all the house responsibilities. Shalosh eina mitzvah samita. For 3 already, if she has 3 maids she brought into the marriage, she doesn't have to make the beds. Hoshara avde, but she has to do small items like go to the post office or bring something from the upstairs downstairs. The taimele, but she brought in 3 already. But she brought in 3. Eilisli achritil orche parche. I already brought in 3 for the orche parche for the guests, so I shouldn't have to do anything. Why? Mishum the amale, because the husband will say nafish b'nei beisa nafish orche parche. Because there's more people in the house, there's going to be more guests and more wayfarers. So therefore, you always have to participate in the house chores. So the Gemara asks, Yehachidi, if it's the case, why does the Mishnah say that if she brought in 4 maids, she could sit on a throne and not do anything? Afila arbanami. Even if she brought in 4 maids, we should require the woman to participate in the house chores. And why does the Mishnah say she could sit on a throne? Answers the Gemara, Arba kivin derfishale Messiah nadave. Since there are 4 maids, so there's too many maids. And therefore, when they're not busy, they help each other out. So therefore, that's enough for her to be exempt from any responsibility of house chores or even to small errands on behalf of her husband. But the Gemara says, Amar Avchanavi Tamer Shmuel ban Achmeni, lo yichnisa lo mamish. It doesn't mean that she brought in 4 maids when she got married. Elakivan shru'uya lahachnis afal pi shelo yichnisa. Even since she is, let's say she brought enough of a dowry that if you sell some of the dowry, some of the items she brought in, you can hire maids, so that's enough. Since she brought in enough wealth into the marriage, that's considered the husband's responsibility is to hire these maids to exempt her from house chores. Tana, we learned in the Bryce, not only that, whether she brought in the maid, the echad shitzimtzasa loy mishalah. She's being a minimalist, and she's not taking the money that her husband's supposed to give her in order to save up so she could afford a maid. The husband is responsible to purchase a maid, whether she actually brought that money in the dowry or whether she's holding back from taking what's hers on the house, the house income in order that she can afford a maid. The Gemara says, Arba Yesheves Bekatedra. If there are 4 maids already, she could sit on a throne. Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Chananya Rav Huna, Aval Pi Sha'amri Yesheves Bekatedra. Even though we said the woman could sit on a throne, Aval Meizeges Layasakais, she should pour him a little bit of wine, prepare a cup of wine, Umatzas Layasmita, and just spread the sheet of his bed. Or marchatzes like panav yadav ragel, and to give him a manicure, wash his hands and face, hands and feet. These are dvarim of intimacy, right? So therefore, that's suggested that she should do that. Not to be like such a pechech that doesn't even do that. Rav Yitzchak Bachananya, Rav Huna, Kol Malacha Sheisha Oisa Labala, Nida Oisa Labala. All these malachas that a woman should do to her husband, the nida could do to the husband. She can make him supper. She can, cook. She can cook, do the laundry. But chutz, the intimate stuff that a woman does for her husband, a nida should not do for her husband because it leads to marital relations, and that's also when she's a nida. So that's what it says. She should not do mimziga sakais. She should not pour the wine. Matzoy samita, or make the bed. Chotzos panav yad raglav, or to wash his hands and feet, even with the bath cloth. Matzoy samita, even making the beds, it's not that she should leave it messy. Amarava loy amaron el b'fanav. In front of him, she should not make the bed. Avashaloi b'fanav less lambal. If he's not there, she could make the bed. It's not a problem. Regarding preparing a drink for your husband, so I'm not sure if the Gemara says you're not allowed to handle it or what the Gemara's opinion is, but the Gemara just tells you what the Amoraim had made up with their wives, what they will do when they're in nida. Shmuel's wife, she would hand it to him with her left hand, the cup of wine, to show that there's a shinoi over here. So he knew during this time that she is a nida. Abaya's wife, manchele apuma de kuva, would put the cup of wine on top of a jug. Rava's wife would put an abay sadya right by the head of his pillow, where he lied down by his pillow. She would put it there. Rapapa, his wife put it ashar shifa on the bench. So apparently, having wine was very, very important for the diets back then, and they were very sensitive. They had much stronger taste and senses than we have today. You see, before in the Gemara, where the daughter of the Shvar Malka had such a good smell from her, she always sat next to her father. But they had good smells and they had good taste and they had something that they needed all this wine. So the Gemara describes what the Amoraim wives would do to make their husband's wine, a cup of wine, when they were anida. The Gemara says a new topic. Amar Rav Yitzchak Bachananya Amar Rav Huna, Hakoil Mashim B'fnei Hashamis. You could hold the shamas. A waiter should not eat when he's serving. The goyish waiter, even a goyish waiter, the maid should not be eating when when you're sitting down to eat. They should wait to eat until after you finish. And you could cause them to wait. Chutz mibasa v'yayin. If you're drinking hot meat and wine, so then you have to give them a taste because it's dangerous. They're serving all this food and they're not tasting it. It could lead to a dangerous situation. Amar Rav Chisda says it's basar shamin, fatty meat, v'yayin yashin, old wine. Amar Rava said basar shamin, if it's fatty meat, kol hashana kula, the entire year. Yayin yashin, if it's old wine, bitkuvas tammuz, during the summer months where the smell of wine is very strong. So there you can't make the maid or the waiter wait till after you finish. You have to give them something during your meal, because they could get sick by serving this food and not tasting it. Amar Rav Ana bat Tachlifa. Rav Ana bat Tachlifa says, I was in front of Bar Shmuel. And I was the waiter, apparently, Avonin said, and they gave me a little bit of this mushroom dish. If they didn't give me istaktakni, I would have gotten into danger, shock, because that food smelled so good. Amar Ravashi says, when I was by Rav Kana, and they gave me slices of turnip in vinegar. If they didn't give it to me, istakine, I would have gotten in danger. Rapapa says, afila tamarta dihinusa, even a fragrant date, even though it's not cooked, if it has such a sharp smell, to it, it's important that you give the one that's serving it a little piece. Call the milsa, the general rule is, kol de isle recha, if it has a smell, or the isle kihu, it has a sharp taste. So almost like when it passes by you, your mouth waters, you have to give the servant a little bit. It's you do it that the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, would have sometimes cooked foods waft through the camps in order to cause much more pain to the starving people that were incarcerated there. Avura bar Ihi uminyamin bar Ihi. These are two people. Chad, one was so nice to his waiter, Safi mikol mina mina. He would let his waiter taste a little bit of everything. Chad, Safi michad mina. One would only give his waiter from one dish, not from all the dishes. And Mar, the one that gave from each dish to his waiter, he did such a nice thing. Mishtoi Elyo badei. Elyo Navi would speak to him. Umar, the one that only gave one dish to his waiter, loy mishtoi Elyo badei. Elyo Navi would not visit him. The Gemara says, Hani tarte chaside. There were two chasidim. La'amri la, some say, Rab Mari, Rab Pinchas b'nei Rav Chizda. That's a Rab Mari and Rab Pinchas. Mar, one of them, called him Safi. One would give his waiter before they sat down to eat. Umar ma'acher Safi. And one would give the waiter to eat after he finished eating. They called him Safi, the one that fed his waiter first. Elyo mishtor ba'dei. Elyo would talk to him. The ma'acher Safi, the one that fed the waiter after the meal, Elyo would not talk to him. So Elyo only talked to people who were sensitive to the waiter. The Gemara says, Ameimer u'marzutra Ravashi. Ameimer and Marzutra Ravashi. Now, Marzutra, you should know, was fasting. He's very, very hungry. They were around the dining room, so to speak, of the Uzgar Malka. The Uzgar Malka was the Persian king, and he was very good to the Jews. He had Jews hanging around his palace. Chalev va'azal aturagna the Malka. They were going to bring a dish for the king, okay? And they passed by them. Chazir Rav Ashi the Marzutra. Rav Ashi saw Rav Marzutra. We go to Samach Aleph on the base. The Chava Ape, his face turned white. Shokal be'etzba'usa. He took his finger, right? Rav Ashi took his finger and anachle bepume, and took it into what they were going to serve the king and stuck it into Marzutra's mouth. Amalei, so the people who were serving the king said, Asad to the Sudis Malka, you just destroyed the meal that was meant for the king. You put your finger into it. Amrlei, and the police asked them, Amai Tevet Hachi, why did you do something like that? Amalahu, he said, on the spot, Rav Ashi said, Manda Ovid Hachi, whoever made this food, Pasal Malcha the Malka, he made dangerous, poisonous food for the king. And that's why I did it. Amrlei, so they asked him, Amai, how do you know it was poisonous? Amalei, so he said, Davar Acher Chazabeh, I saw a diseased pig in this food that you were going to give the king. But they started investigating the food. They didn't find it. Shakal etzba asay. So Rav Ashi said, it took his finger, and he pointed to a certain spot, Amalahu, and he asked them, did you test this part of the food? But they found it, ashkache, and they found that there was diseased pig meat there. So it's a good thing that they didn't feed it to the king. So this was a nace, because really there was no diseased pig there, but Hashem made it because Rav Ashi pointed there. Amr le Rabbanim, to Rabbanim says, "My tama samachta anisa." Why would you rely that God do a nace to you? Amr lehu. So he answered, "Chazu ruach tzaras the karpoche alave." It's not a nace. I saw a ruach tzaras, means I saw a spirit of leprosy flying around. Probably it's coming from Azutra going to the food. So somehow it wasn't like a tremendous nace, but it was a nace at the end of the day. The Gemara tells a story. There was this Roman. The told this woman, get married to me. So she said, Loi, I'm not getting married to you. She brought a date, a rimon, a pomegranate. And Pale va'achal kameh. He split it open and ate it in front of you. Kol maya detzarele belase. She really wanted that, and every time she swallowed her saliva, is the water. She swallowed her saliva. Her mouth watered up, and she kept swallowing the saliva as she observed this Roman eating this pomegranate. But like Havla, and he didn't give her. Ad de zogla, she blew up and she got very sick. The soif amala. So at the end, the Roman said, if I heal you, minisatli, would you get married to me? Amalei, and she said, agreed to it. It was pekuach nefesh. Azel Iseri money. He brought another pomegranate. Pali, he split it in front of her. Va'achal kamein ate it. And Amalei, and he said to her, Kol maya detza'arilach. Anytime this water, you water up your mouth, tuf shadai. Spit it out. Ad denafka mine, until she spit out enough saliva that her mouth was watering from this pomegranate, and she kept spitting out the saliva, kihutze yarka, like green bile from her mouth, the istasias, and she got healed. And I guess maybe she married him. So that's the story about eating in front of people, which might cause them to want, and you're not giving them. The Mishnah says, a woman has to take the wool from her husband's sheep, and she has to turn it into strands. But Sema and the Pishtan loy, but she's supposed to work with wool, but she's not supposed to work with flax. Masnisin mani Rabbi Hudi. Our Mishnah says, the Mishnah goes that requires a woman to only work in wool and not flax, goes according to who? Rabbi Huda. In Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Ein Kaifa, you can't force your wife, Loy Lamoy Lifnei Aviv, not to get up in front of your father, Veloy Lamoy Lifnei Benoy, or not to get up in front of your son, Veloy Litein Tevin Lifnei Behemta. You can't force your wife to give straw to your animal. Rashi says that the reason why you can't force your wife to give straw to your animal is because she could say, I'm afraid the animal is going to attack me to have relations with me. But you could force her to give straw to your cow because the cow is not going to attack her to have relations with her. Strange. But anyway, Rabbi Yehuda says, you can't force your wife to make strands out of flax. Why not? Pishtan, if you need to put these stuff into your mouth, and it causes you to have bad breath, it probably causes your lips to blow up or to become a certain deformality, so become deformed. So therefore, you cannot force your wife to work with flax. What we're talking about over here, the Roman flax. Then the Mishnah said, Rabbi Lezer says, even if your wife brings you in 100 maize, she still has to work with the wool. Amar Rav, so that's the opinion of Rabbi Lezer, because a woman that's not working, she's going to do znus. If a woman's not working, it's not a good thing. Amar of Malkiyoi, its name is Malkiyu. Malkiyu with a vav. Amar of Adabar Hava, halacha Rabbi Lezer. The halacha is like Rabbi Lezer, that a woman always has to work. No matter how rich she comes from, and she brings in 100 maids, she has to work, then has to do the wool. Amar Rav Chanina Bereid Rav Ika. Rav Chanina and the son of Rav Ika said, the following halachas was said by Rav Malkiyu. Shiput, Shvachos, V'Gumois. 3 different halachas was said by Rav Malkiyu with a vav. Bluris, Efer Mikla, Ugvina. The other 3 halachas, Blurius, Efer Mikla, Ugvina, that's in other places in Shas. It's Rav Malkiyo. The Malkiyo with the aleph said it, not the one with the vav. And Rav Papa gave you a way to remember it. Masnisin or masnita, if it's something that they're commenting on a Mishnah or a Brisa, then remember it's Rav Malkiyu, with an aleph. Shmaitza, but if it's a teaching in the Gemara, Rav Malkiyu, it's Rav Malkiyu who said it. V'simonach, and the simon is Masnisa. The Mishnah is Malchus is the queen, ends with an aleph. So Malkiya was the one that commented on Mishnayos and Brises. And Malkiyu commented on Gemara. My benayu, between what Rav Chanina Bereid Rav Ika said and what Rav papa who gave a mnemonic. Ika benaya shvachos. Our Mishnah of shvachos of maids is a Mishnah. So if it's a Mishnah, according to Rav Papa, who said it? Rav Malkiyah with an aleph. But Rav Chanina B'Greva Ikas Rav Malkiyu Omer Rav Ada bar Hava. It seems it was Malkiyu who said it, not the way Rav Chanina B'Greva Ikas said it. It's Rav Malkiyu, not Rav Malkiyah. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, even if a husband says, "I don't want my wife to work. I'm making a neder that she should not work," what does he say? Yeah, that you can't do that. She has to work. She has to work because if she doesn't work, she's going to go insane. So the Gemara says, "Hainu Tanakama." Isn't that what Rav Leza said? Rav Leza said she's going to do znus. Rav Shimon Gamliel says she's going to go insane. Ikebenayo. The difference is that if she does work, the metalsa begursa kitanaisa. Apparently, if she's busy with small dogs, she's grooming her dog like you see in Manhattan, the women there with the small dogs. She does busy with that. The nadarsha, or she plays games or chess or bridge or whatever. So according to Shimon Gamliel, if she does that, then fine, that's okay. At least she's doing something that occupies her mind. Rabbi Lezer says that's not enough because that's not productive work. And therefore, because she's not doing productive work, it could lead to znus. And therefore, that's not enough. A woman has to work in the world doing productive stuff to sell. Let's just do the Mishnah and then we'll stop. Another minute. We know a woman, you have to provide oina. You have to have marital relations. And the Gemara is going to tell us, the Mishnah is going to tell us, people have to have marital relations. Depends on what your profession is and depends on how healthy you are. So, but what happens? A man says to his wife that whatever hana that I'm going to get from having marital relations should be asur on me. So really, he's doing something against the Torah. The Torah says you have to have marital relations with your wife. So we could technically say they should get divorced right away. Beishamai says you should wait 2 weeks because during 2 weeks maybe he will find a heter to undo the vow. You wait only 1 week. If after 1 week he didn't undo the vow, then you have to get a divorce. The Mishnah says, "Ha-talmidim," those that were student. The Mishnah, a student has to do marital relations once a week with your wife, Friday night. But if you're a Talmud Chacham, you don't have to ask your wife, and you can go away for 30 days to go learn in a yeshiva abroad and come back on the 31st day. Even though technically you're required to be with your wife once a week, but this is part of the understanding of the marriage, that if she's married to a Talmud Chacham, there are times that he's going to have to go away for 30 days. Hapai Alim, a worker, somebody, let's say, who works in construction or plumbing or whatever he is. So he has to be with his wife twice a week. But what happens? He has an out-of-town job. So then he could go away Shabbos Achatz only 1 week and come back on the 8th day to do relations with his wife. So he gets a heter and doesn't have to ask his wife permission because it's understood he's not going to always have work right near his house to be able to come home every night. Now the Mishnah concludes, the Torah says you have to have relations with your wife. How often do you have to have relations with your wife? Hatayolim, if you're somebody who's rich and is not working, if you're healthy, you have to have relations with your wife every day. Hapayalim, if you're a worker and you work locally, shtayim b'Shabbos, you have to have twice a week relations with your wife. Hachamorim, if you're a donkey driver selling items to other places in the suburbs, achas b'Shabbos, once a week when you come home. Hagamolim, if you're a camel driver and you're going on long distance trips, achas l'shloshim yom, once or 30 days. Hasaponim, if you're a sailor, achas l'shisha chodashim, once every 6 months, because usually the jobs were 3 months there and 3 months back. So once in 6 months, you have to come back and have relations with your wife. And she understands that because she married you with the understanding that she's not going to have marital relations as often as if she would have married somebody else. Divrei Rabbi Lezer, so says Rabbi Elazar. So we'll Be'ez Hashem discuss this Mishnah about Oina tomorrow.